been doing video production stuff. I've been doing it how I did when I was on the news, which is, you know, you have a camera and I mic somebody up using a wired lavalier. And that's always how I've done it for years.
Right.
For the 10 years I was at Cayman 27, and I've always done it that route. And because I like the way that I know there's not going to be any interference, but and it usually sounds pretty good. But recently, now that I've really been getting into video production, I'm realizing that it can be a pain in the ass to ask somebody to lift up their shirt and run up the mic and blah blah blah, because that's how I do it. Because I don't like the wire hanging out in front. It bothers me when I go back and I look at it. So I've been trying to think of a solution, and I think I'm going to go the way that, you know, is probably the more professional way or the more polished way, which is actually getting a microphone that's either a lavalier that's not wired, and I don't have to ask the person to, you know, run it in between your buttons, run it up to your collar.
Especially when it's a woman, right?
And they're pulling up their shirt. And to be honest, in 10 years of doing it, like nobody's ever really scoffed at it or ever really like, you know, been a big deal about it. But mostly it's for me, more for like time efficiency. So I can like, when it's done, wrap up and like get out and not have to like, you know, mess around with the persons. I've hit people in the face before, you know, and then you're like, oh, sorry, man, you know.
And then sometimes they walk away with it and you're like, oh, I forgot to de-mic you.
Exactly. So anyways, I might hit you up for some recommendations for solutions to that problem if I can do that.
Definitely.
I bet you probably know a couple. So
yeah, no, definitely, man. I did some research online. By the way, we're running with it.
Oh, good. Yep.
You know, on YouTube, and I found these mics pretty cheap, but pretty nice. And, you know, it's a thing. Like some people, you know, love lavs. Some people like mics. You know, it's just a personal thing.
Yeah.
Some people don't like to see the mics. That really annoys people. Like it sounds like it annoys you too.
The cord annoys me.
Right.
Seeing the clip and the actual mic itself, I'm okay with, because, you know, I think people, when they're watching a video, even if it's not, even if it's just something on YouTube, like they understand that to have good audio, there's a microphone involved somewhere. Right. You know what I mean? So you're not, if this camera were just picking up the audio, you know, we would not sound like this, because these mics, I think, sound fantastic. Right. So yeah, that little bit doesn't bother me, but yeah, a cord hanging out. In fact, I did a project, and I was quite disappointed with myself very recently, where it was like a series of interviews. And in one of the interviews that I did, the woman was wearing a really nice dress, but there were like no sleeves, right? So that's always difficult to, and also there's nowhere to run the cord up, like a t-shirt or something. Right. And so that's always a little bit more difficult, because you try to like come through the back and get it underneath, you know, her shoulder, like that part of the dress, and then run it up, you know, by her mouth so you can get clear audio. Yeah. But, you know, she talks with her hands, and eventually the cord slips out. So I've got, you know, a fantastic interview with this woman, and all I can see as the producer is the cord hanging out, out of the side. And it bothers me so much, but I didn't want to, like, you know, one solution to that might be, you know, make her a bit bigger, scale the frame up, and then move it around to get rid of the cord. But it was such a beautiful background we had. It was shot at Cayman Bay, and you could see the water behind. So I didn't want to do that, because like I also really liked the background. So anyways, it was kind of a, you know, it was one of those things where a great interview. She was fantastic, but yeah, that wire really messed me up. It bugs you. Huh? It's all I could think about while I was watching it. Yeah.
You see, people don't know what us producers have to deal with. The things that we think about, the things that bother us. You know, I remember when I used to be naive about production. Those were the good old days. You know, people don't think about audio. You know, they're like, oh, come and record this, and interview me, and then, you know, but there's no mic, and you're like, we can't do this. Like, I know you think that I can actually interview you without a mic, but we're just not going to do that.
I find, you know, sometimes it's similar, and people don't know, they're not in the industry, right? But a lot of times I find it similar on the photography side with the phrase, you can Photoshop that, right? And don't get me wrong, the tools that are available now with AI through like the Adobe platform in particular are like so sophisticated and so strong and quite amazing, and you can do really a lot. Yeah. But it's not always just as simple as a click of a button and now the thing is fixed, right? Like a lot of times it can take some time to go back, and so you do that, you know, with 1,000 photos or something, and you know, that's just not like plausible. So it's like, no, let's get it right in camera, and then not have to worry about the photoshopping afterward, right? So
for sure. But it's anyway, like Gigo. You remember that? G-I-G-O.
GI Joe.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Oh, right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Garbage. Well, that's exactly it. Right. And to, you know, that same effect, I'm a big believer in zooming with your feet. Right. That was always one. That's always one that we did in news was, you don't have to rely on the lens to zoom in, right? Like if you have to, you have to. But why don't you get closer to the thing, whatever the thing may be? And that's probably, from a journalistic point of view, a better way to do it anyway, because now you're hearing what's going on and you know, whatever. So yeah, that was one of ours, and that's exactly right. Like if you can shoot with quality and shoot it right, you don't have to kill yourself on the back end.
The back end looks way better, you know. So tell me about that time at Cayman 27, 10 years, huh? So when you came to Cayman, is that the first place you worked?
No.
Oh.
No, I came to Cayman and I worked for a newspaper that no longer exists called what was it?
Was it the Net News?
Yes, the Cayman Net News.
Wow.
I worked at the Cayman Net News with
what year?
Mr. Desmond.
Cool.
That was April of 2010 that I moved to the Cayman Islands. I'd been down here a couple times before on holiday and absolutely loved it. But that was when I actually came down here to live and work.
Okay.
And so I lasted about 2.5 weeks at the Cayman Net News, maybe not even.
Really?
Before I realized that it was not the place for me. We'll put it like that. And there was another employee who had just, the editor at the time, had just moved down as well. And we were both from the U.S. And so, you know, we were kind of like this, you know, we were talking.
Yeah.
She ended up, I think, working. So we both left after about 2 weeks of the Net News. And she ended up, I think, working with the Compass after that. And then, you know, I went to immigration and I'm like, hey, I've quit my job. What do I do? You know, and they were basically like, you got 3 weeks, right? And I was getting these things called visitor stamps where they just kept it because I was no longer on work permit because they canceled my work permit.
Right.
So they gave me about 3 weeks. And in that 3 weeks, I was scrambling and I was sending in stuff to the Compass. I was sending in stuff to Cayman 27. Any other, you know, communications type opportunity that I would have seen. And nobody was getting back to me and on that third week, you know, immigration told me, hey, this is the last visitor's extension. We're going to give you, like, you're going to have to leave if you don't sort something out.
Right.
And so kind of by that third week, I had resigned myself to the fact that, like, this isn't going to work out. And I think I could still maybe get my old job back in Wisconsin if I, you know, email them now and try something. I don't think they've hired somebody to fill my spot. Anyway, in that last week, and man, like whatever, God or, you know, whatever you want to believe in, the planets aligned. I went to a housewarming party for the woman that I'd worked with for 2 weeks at the Net News.
Okay.
She got a new apartment in Baden Town, and it was right on the water, and she loved it, and so she was having some people over to, you know, just celebrate or whatever.
Sure.
And while I was there, I went out there, and while I was there, just ended up bumping into a woman who was a producer at Cayman 27, and I told her about my situation, and she totally understood because I was not the only journalist to come through the Net News and have a similar, I think, experience. In fact, you want to name some of the journalists still active, you know, very popular journalists in Cayman came through the Net News, like Wendy and Tammy.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And a couple more that just kind of escaped me. Anyway, so I was at this housewarming party, bumped into a producer from Cayman 27. She was like, I'm right there on the spot, called up, I believe Mike Martin, who was the former general manager, and or maybe it was Rick Alpert, who was an award-winning, you know, producer and station director at Cayman 27 back then, and you know, said, hey, I'm at this party. There's this guy named, you know, Kevin. He's a journalist. This is what's going on. Anyway, at this party, she basically got me an interview the following week. So I went and interviewed with April Cummings and. Yeah, you know, with just like literally a couple days left on island before I had to go.
They offered you a job?
They offered me a job, and and I was with them for the next 10 years.
Wow.
In a variety of, you know, I started out as a reporter and then moved on to sports producer, which is what I did for the longest period of time. But I was the weatherman and, you know, talk show host and whatever. You know, the thing I loved about Cayman 27 was you did it all, right? You shot, you wrote, you you edited the video, you were the anchor, you were the whatever.
Weatherman, sports guy.
Everything. So in terms of like, just like cutting your teeth and learning about the business, it was like small time TV station where like you did it all. I mean, I bet I could even, I did direct shows, you know, and that's not what I did all the time, but like it happened where, you know, somebody was out sick or whatever on vacation, and then their replacement was out sick, and then it's like, well, somebody's got to punch this show. Who's it going to be, right? Oh, I think I know. I've seen it enough times. I think I know how to do it, and it works, right? So, man, I loved it. It came in 27. It was the best job I ever had.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
I mean, it just looks. I mean, I would imagine that it's so much fun just because you have to produce content every single day. So it's just like nonstop.
Yeah.
Like you can't chill, which is part of the excitement of always producing, right?
You know what? It's really funny that you say that because you're absolutely 100% right. But it's funny how the thought of that is different at 41 years old than it is at like 28 years old when I think I first started with Cayman 27.
Sure.
Because you're right. I remember loving it. I loved the adrenaline of it.
Right.
You have to have a story. And these journalists at Cayman 27 and even still a lot of stations and even in newspapers too, they're not writing one story or they're not producing one video that day. They're doing what we'd call a package, which is, you know, B-roll and then the journalist's narration, followed by soundbite, followed by the narration and B-roll, followed by soundbite. So we do that, and it's about 2 minutes long or a minute and a half. We do one of those per day, and then something shorter, you know, where it's we might have just written something for the anchor to read and then toss to a soundbite, and that's, you know, it's called a VOSAT. So you do a package and a VOSAT per day, like minimum. That was the expectation. So, you know, you had 9 hours from like when you got there and pitched your story, and then hopefully the producer and the news director said, "Yeah, that sounds good." To you had to go out and shoot it and meet the people you had to meet and interview them and convince them to go on camera because that was a big part of it. And it was exciting. And every single day you had to come with something, and I did love it. And like the juice is flowing and the adrenaline pumping. And but I'm old now and I'm tired. So like, to be honest with you, like it's just completely different, you know, thought and outlook. And you know, I think that's why a lot of the reporters that you see out and about tend to be like the younger folks, or if not, then they probably have a cameraman with them. They're not necessarily one man banding it.
Right.
But life gets a little bit slower in your 40s. That's what I have found. You know?
Yeah, me too. But I mean, every day producing content, that is a lot, you know, and I'm sure that the impression that I get too, with you, Cayman 27, folk, is the camaraderie that you guys seem to have. You always really seem to like each other. You always seem to be hanging out, you know, and I think that's part of the love I get from production is just working with people.
Yes.
And when you're in that high stress environment with these people, it's like, you know, it's like you're in the army or something. Right. You kind of grow together and you really appreciate each other. And,
absolutely.
You know, that's part of the fun. That's what it seemed like at Cayman 27.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it on the head. You're a team, right? And this product, because above and beyond anything else, you know, you're trying to create this newscast to inform the community, and that's an important thing. And we take a lot of pride in it as journalists. And so, yeah, you're working together with, you know, when I started at Cayman 27, it was, I want to say there were like 20 to 25 people in the newsroom at that time. Okay. And so you're working with, you know, two dozen other people to try and put this product or these products on air for the good of the community, for the good of the Cayman Islands, right? Like I said, we really bought into that, and we really took a lot of pride in that. And so, yeah, I think for you, it's storytelling, and it's telling, you know, telling people stories, and like that is important, and people trust you to do that. And so you're working as a team to like put out the best production that you can. And I think that, yeah, you end up trusting people a lot because you've all bought into this goal, and you're all working together. You know, you're rowing the boat in the same direction. And so, yeah, you end up being, I'm still very good friends with, you know, some of my best friends are my former colleagues from Cayman 27. Yeah. So, yeah, that was for me, the very special part of it as well. I mean, I remember in the early days, again, this is when you know, hangovers didn't last a week and et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, it would be relatively routine, if not, maybe not every day, but for us to, you know, the newscast wraps up, oh, let's go down to, Hammerheads at the time,
Right.
and go have a mini celebration and, grab a drink together, something like that. So yeah, really good friendships came out of that, and a lot of bonding. And that, I think you're right, that is kind of the special part of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that is the special part of production. So, and I think, it's funny with Cayman 27, like you're saying, you guys, you were projecting stories for the community and taking that seriously. And so many people used to watch it, and people today miss it. They talk about it. They don't understand why it's not on anymore. My mom used to watch Daybreak and then watch the evening news. And it's just not here anymore. Why is that?
Yeah. It wasn't financially viable. Not at the end. To have a license to be an over-the-air operator was very expensive. To run a news organization is very expensive. And those two factors, combined with the fact that traditional advertising, it has gone away, and 20 years, 30, 40 years ago, you didn't have things like Google ads and Facebook ads and all these other digital competitors competing for advertising space. And so all of those things, it's a combination of factors in my mind, that's why it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
And I do think, and it's really interesting because at the same time that, the TV station goes away and newspapers around the world are doing the same thing. It's not unique to Cayman.
Yeah, true.
It's all over the world, especially in the newspaper industry, that media shops are closing up.
The Compass has changed a lot in Cayman, right? We used to get a paper every day.
Right. And that's exactly it. And I think, I was there during COVID, and COVID
At the Compass?
At the Compass, yep.
Yeah.
I was the editor at the Compass during the kind of COVID lockdown era. And that put a lot of strain and pressure on media organizations, again, all around the world, not in Cayman and not just the Compass, all around the world.
Right.
But it's probably a bit, the situation I think is a bit unique in Cayman, because you most definitely have a kind of finite group of potential advertisers, right? And a lot of the businesses here are not, we don't have big box stores here in Cayman. And I only say that to say that, while you have competition for advertising outlets, you also have maybe a handful, in my view, this is just my opinion, a handful of advertisers that could actually help keep your business afloat, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I think there's some pressures that exist here in the media landscape that maybe still exist abroad, but maybe the pressure, there's more potential advertising out there,
Sure.
And so, yeah, I think COVID kind of accelerated a lot of where, the media industry was going in terms of, digital and using online outlets and platforms to tell news stories instead of just, relying on what you had been doing in the past. Yeah. And again, I think you're seeing that all over the world. 20 years ago, journalists didn't use Twitter to send out quick reports.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
They waited until, the newspaper came out the next morning, and you got your paper and you read what happened in court the day before or on the baseball field the day before. And now it's like guy hits a home run. It's on Instagram, the entire video, never mind, somebody hit a home run. The entire video and celebration and still photos are on Instagram within 2 minutes,
Right. Right.
So and sorry, let me circle back to why I started on this. These papers go away. The news station goes away in a time where information has never been more in demand. And that's what's kind of crazy about the situation. People want and expect information now more than ever, and they want it quickly, and they want it accurate, and they want to see videos. They don't want to just hear you. They want to see what happened. They want to see photos. They want to see video.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the challenge I think that media organizations are facing right now is how can we, maybe change up what we've done in the past to make it more convenient and be able to connect with our viewers or readers in a way that maybe we haven't before.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, when we do have another TV station here in Cayman, because I'm confident that we will at some point, what I would guess if we're trying to look into the future is I think it'll in some ways look a lot different than a traditional TV station would. At first, I don't think you'll ever see another free over-the-air station in Cayman. And that is I don't know if antiquated technology anyway. I think most people have a hookup to the internet these days,
right.
or have cable or something like that.
Right.
So I don't think we'll see free over the air where you can just put up, your bunny
antennas.
ears.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think you'll see something on like YouTube. And I think it'll be kind of like this. It'll be, news anchor, reading you the news, but it'll be on YouTube, and you can access YouTube on your phone. You can punch it up on your smart TV. That's, again, it's possible to watch a nightly news now without having to be on an actual channel. Right. So if I were starting a TV station today and I had limited funding, I would shoot it on iPhones. I'd make sure all my, my 3 or 4 staff, whatever I can get, are shooting stuff on iPhones, because for news, which traditionally doesn't necessarily have to look, I guess, as polished, in my opinion, as maybe like a commercial production, you're running and gunning and you're getting interviews. And a lot of times if you have halfway decent mic that you can plug into your iPhone and you have something to maybe stabilize your shot a bit,
that does the trick.
You're good to go.
Yeah.
You're good to go.
Yeah.
And you come back and you can edit your video on whatever, on a Premiere or whatever you're using, just like you could if you shot it with a DSLR or a camcorder or whatever. So that's what I would do. And I think that's what, potentially the future of news will look like, is a little bit more nitty gritty and less people involved. You're not going out in the field with a producer and a reporter and a cameraman. It's that one person is going to do it all. And I think it'll be a lot more digitally based as well.
Yeah.
Not only in terms of where the program will be played, but also in terms of like continuing to use things like Instagram and other social media platforms to do the storytelling in combination with the kind of the traditional show or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So sorry, that took that was
was
one question that we really went. Yeah.
Well, it's crazy because you and I have lived this. We've lived this transformation of our industry and have sort of had to evolve with it. And I'm sure, maybe not with you, but for me, I've sort of had to question why I'm doing this. Should I be doing this? What was something was once specialized is now, democratic. Anybody can do a show, anybody can produce, and everybody does produce sort of their own shows, right? So it's like, where do I fit in all that?
Right.
So it's just very interesting to see it all, happen. Yeah. And then I feel like we're in the middle of it still. Like there's this big change. It's a big sweeping change, which has sort of knocked all the newspapers out, knocked, the big corporate news medias out, but we don't know what's on the other end. Yeah. Like 10 years from now, what does it look like? And I'm sure it won't look like how it looks now. Maybe there will be news stations again, but they're operating differently or something,
Yeah, yeah. Or and you bring up a really interesting point with the accessibility of the tools to people, which I think is a fantastic thing and a good thing. In fact, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing at Content Studio if I wasn't able to get a professional level camera and microphones like we were talking about, right? And so, these tools that used to be just like a computer, super expensive and maybe super big and just not, the cell phones from the 80s with like the
big white ones.
Right, that you held on to like that, right? It's fantastic, I think, not only from a creative and artistic point of view, but also from like a storytelling and, getting information to the public point of view that these people have tools available to them. And I think it's up to news organizations to figure out how to harness that.
Exactly.
And so instead of looking at it as competition, I feel like you lean into it.
Sure.
Whatever that might mean. And that could mean a variety of different
Sure.
things. But like the trend is going that way. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you can't go backwards.
You can't go backwards.
As much as you wish things were the way they were, like you got to look forward.
And same thing, we're talking about using social media. You can no longer, as a media organization, wait until 6 o'clock tonight, or the paper comes out tomorrow morning, or whatever, like to do the story. People will have learned about the story. And if you're just regurgitating the same thing that they knew about last night, then it's irrelevant. If you're somehow forwarding the story and giving them new information, then sure.
Sure, yeah.
But, the traditional ways of kind of doing business, absolutely don't exist anymore. And but again, and here's the important part, the demand for information, in my opinion, has never been stronger. And people want to know what's happening in their community, and they want to see pictures of little Johnny scoring the goal, and they want to see, their daughter receiving an award, an academic scholarship, or whatever. People care about what's happening in their community, and like I said, the demand is there. And one other thing that kind of I thought about while you were saying that was the tools are available, but storytelling itself is, in my opinion, a very kind of personal and like innate skill to have. You're going to tell a story in like your particular way. You're an artist, right? Mm-hmm. When you're putting a film together, you're an artist. And even though like news isn't, I wouldn't necessarily consider it art, like you have a responsibility to like tell that person's story in an appropriate and accurate way. And you owe it to that person to give them your best effort. And there's certain aspects of storytelling that I think are like kind of maybe specific to film or specific to news, where it's not in chronological order. Like a news story, it's not, the game started here, and then in the first inning here, and the second inning this happened, and the third inning that happened. If you look at a baseball story, that's not how they go. It's so-and-so hit a walk-off home run, and the Yankees won the game 10-9.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's the first paragraph. And then in news, we call it the inverted pyramid. So you start with the most important information up top.
Interesting.
And then you get into the details.
Right.
You don't do it chronologically,
Right.
because people would like go to sleep.
Right.
Like that's not as interesting that way.
Right.
So you get the important information up top, right? And so, or maybe if you're doing a film, maybe you get the tension up top, right? It's not, if you're following a character throughout a story, it's not she was born, this thing happened, and then she died. Like it doesn't always go like that.
Right.
And so all that to say that like the important part is like you're still a good storyteller. And I consider myself to be a good storyteller, whether that's with the written word or through photography or videography or whatever. And that's the part that not everybody has. You can buy the tools.
Yeah.
You can buy the tools.
Yeah.
But do you know how to construct the house?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure. And that's the part that technology hasn't made easy.
Not yet.
Yeah. Not yet.
Not yet.
Well,
and that's another thing. It probably will one day.
Yeah.
And in fact, it probably does now. Maybe I just don't know how to do it. But then there's just a way to continue on that. You can't fight technology. You know what I mean? You got to lean into it, and you got to figure out, okay, well, the game has changed. And so how do I now adapt? And that's from not only a creative point of view, but also like a business point of view as well.
Yeah. It's funny because what's so interesting to me is like I watch some replays of like the NFL or like some of the soccer games, and they use replays from people in the stadium who are recording with their cell phone. So you get like a touchdown, but then you get like the guy on the 50 yards point of view of the same touchdown. And then you got the guy behind the touchdown filming. So you have all these different shots. It's like, that is so crazy.
Absolutely. And again, that fan, and I mean, that was the whole thing. That's why Twitter in particular exploded, because it was like personal and it was instant. Right.
Yeah.
And so if you were out at a sporting event and that touchdown happened, you as one person, not getting paid any money to be there, in fact, you spent money to be there,
Sure.
Can have up that replay from your personal perspective as quickly, if not, quicker than a production team and a replay production team of, again, like dozens of people I've seen, and been a part of, been lucky enough to be a part of some of these like major, Division I, NCAA television broadcasts and stuff like that. And these are dozens, plural, of people with millions of dollars of technology and equipment that they have in the backs of like 2 semis that, drive around the country. They're mobile production trucks, right? And that's $1 million, millions, plural, operation going on. And this person's just like, boop, boop, and there it is.
And the whole world's viewing it.
And the whole world's viewing it. And the whole world doesn't really care that it's a little bit grainy or a little bit shaky and that the audio is kind of whatever.
Yeah.
The whole world's just like, oh, here's a new perspective that I didn't see. I saw it on TV, but here's, the guy in row 6, seat A or whatever. And then now I'm seeing it from his perspective. And that's kind of cool. And it's right on my phone. Yeah. I didn't have to look for it. I was scrolling and it showed up and I was like, oh, cool. Yeah. So yeah, it's wild. It's wild. And you see broadcasts, you're right, like using those things. They also, not only do they use kind of user-generated content, they will have their TV production, but then, the team or whoever will also have their entire social media or marketing department that's doing even other stuff, right? And as the players are coming out on the field, giving them fist bumps or giving them a perspective of them walking down the tunnel or something. And so people want to see, they want to, have the different angles and the unique perspectives because that also is part of storytelling. They're seeing a part of that story that they didn't know about before, and now they do. Right. And they like that. Yeah. Right. So again, it's how do you harness that and how do you, it's always funny to me when you go to, I don't know, not really a sporting event, but if you go to like a conference or something, professional conference, and they're like, hey, we're not allowing cameras, or like you can't videotape, or a concert, right? They're like, you can only do video for the first song, and then the rest you can't do it. And it's like, bro, look at the like couple thousand people out here with their cell phones. What is the difference between that camera and a cell phone? Like nothing. Yeah. So like, come on, we can't hold on to that. Like that's not possible anymore, right? Like, yeah, it's out there. You're not,
You can't stop it.
You can't stop it. You can't stop it.
There is a camera looking at everything. It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. And all humans, we all have cameras in our pockets. Which is crazy. It's cameras that actually sort of largely revolutionize social media. There's not many social media apps that don't use the camera, right? So like, Facebook, Instagram, the main suspects are all built off of this camera, right? Snapchat. I think, I looked up Snapchat like the other day, like on the website, and I was actually surprised. They're like, we are a camera app. And I was like, yeah, you are. That's like, and they're like, everything sort of revolves around the camera for them. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly it. We don't think about, you think a cell phone, so you think it does lots of things. But I think one of the greatest things it does is it's a camera.
It is, yeah, absolutely. Right? It's when you say that. So I had Facebook remind me of a whatever post or something that I made 10 years ago or 15 years ago or whatever. And it's really funny that you bring that up because what struck me about it was all text. And there wasn't a photo or a video that I had posted with it, or an emoji, or a location, or a feeling, or any of that stuff that you do now. It's not like Kevin Morales was feeling excited in Cayman Islands, along with a photo and a video and a reel and whatever else. It was just like going to the beach today. And I was like, well, that's a super lame post. Like, I was not on top of my social media game.
Those old posts are hard to look at.
Yeah, but not only was it a lame post, but it wasn't even a lame post with a photo or something, right? And so you're absolutely right. That I think did revolutionize it.
Hey, but you're from Wisconsin, so back then, I'm sure all your friends were like, "What? Kevin's going to the beach?" Like that must have been an exciting post.
Well, that's why I put that, right? Yeah. It was most definitely at that point in my time, at that point in my life, like just trying to make my friends jealous that I could go to the beach in October or whatever. Most of my posts around 2010, 2011 were probably geared toward just, being a dick to my friends.
Oh man. So let's talk Milwaukee. Are you from Milwaukee? I know you're from Wisconsin.
I'm from Milwaukee. I was born and raised in Milwaukee, and I know you went to school there in Milwaukee.
Yes. Where in Milwaukee?
So I grew up on the west side of Milwaukee. Okay. For those who are lucky enough to have been to the wonderful city of Milwaukee, they might know Honestly, the biggest thing that I would link to it is Mayfair Mall. It wasn't necessarily, it was a bus ride away, but people know where Mayfair Mall is.
Sure.
So anyways, grew up in Milwaukee. My father passed away when I was very young, when I was 5 years old. So it was basically just me and my mom. She was a public school teacher, and I was just, a kid. Lived there until I was about 10 or 11, and then we moved to a suburb called West Bend.
I remember the name.
So it's just just suburb of Milwaukee, and then changed schools and all that stuff. So lived in Wisconsin for the first 18 years of my life, and then I went to college at the University of Minnesota, which is even colder and more miserable in the winter. So I don't know that was a good idea. Although I loved my time in Minnesota. That was really nice as well. So Milwaukee's beautiful, and I really like the culture there. It's kind of like an alternative hipster. But,
it is,
but still Midwestern nice, kind of culture.
Right.
Honestly, I just couldn't deal with the winters anymore.
Yeah.
It's just brutal. And I don't like having to layer up with sweaters and, plural, and a coat and gloves and a hat and a scarf and boots, and your feet still get cold and wet and
Yeah.
No, I had to leave because one time somebody got me, my I think stepdad got me a shovel so that I could keep it in the back of my car. And shovel my car out of snow banks or whatever.
Yeah.
You have to do that. You have to wake up in the morning. Oh my God. Oh my God. And earlier, you have to wake up earlier than you normally would, just like you have to do it with traffic here, right?
Sure.
And so, people here can relate. It's just for a different reason.
Right.
It's to go outside when it's, 20 below and take a shovel and literally shovel the snow out from around your car.
Just so you can leave the
Just
house.
so you can leave. And the sun's not out, right? Because it's winter, and so you only see 5 hours of sun a day or whatever. And no, I couldn't do it. I remember getting the shovel and being really excited about it, and then thinking about it and being like, that's sad that I'm so excited about getting a shovel. I gotta get out of here. I gotta make some moves. So
as a Caymanian, I love the snow. It was a great 3 years for me. Obviously, growing up there, I'm sure I got tired of it, but I definitely loved it. I love the layers. I love layering up. You don't get to do that in Cayman.
Dude,
you do not layer up in Cayman.
I totally
if
get
you
it.
layer up, people are
my God.
why do you have two shirts on?
You should be wearing a t-shirt and shorts.
Yeah.
And
and you got to answer questions. Why do you got a beanie on your head? It's just leave me alone.
I have two boys who were born here, and they are exactly like you. So we went to New York earlier this year, and it snowed. We were lucky that it snowed while we were there. In fact, It was like a proper blizzard.
Nice.
And my kids were in heaven, absolutely in heaven, because they'd never seen snow before.
Right.
It was just so funny because we're polar opposites, right? You talk to them about going to the beach, you're like, Dad, it's sandy, it's hot. They'll go, and once they're there, they have a blast and get in the water. They have a lot of fun.
Right.
But they're not enthralled by the beach necessarily.
Right.
Because if we don't go this weekend, we'll go next weekend or the weekend after that.
Sure.
It's like that. And then when it snowed, it was like we have to go outside. We have to go have a snowball fight. And they were through the moon for about 30 to 45 minutes, and then the shit that I was thinking about kicked in with them too.
Right.
They're like, oh. My fingers hurt. My toes, I stepped in a puddle and now my socks are wet and my toes are freezing. And it was exactly, bro. And my youngest one, because it gets so dry in the winter. He got such chapped lips that it actually
started to bleed.
Kind of cut. Yeah, and it was bleeding. Yeah. And here I am, we're on vacation. And I'm an idiot. And so I want to take selfies everywhere we go. And my poor son, because he's a good sport, he smiles. And every time he smiles, it splits again. But Daddy keeps taking selfies. And then it was funny. Then we were in New York for about a week and was going through all that. And you get all ashy and we were in Florida for one day and all that stuff went away. Because we stopped in Fort Lauderdale, I think, on the way back down to Cayman.
Right.
And one day in Florida, our skin was better. the chapped lips went away.
Right.
So.
That's funny, man. I remember one semester my mom had bought me this big thing of lotion. And I just never used lotion in my life.
Right.
And it just kind of sat in my apartment for months. weeks. And then one day, one of my friends came over and was like, "Why don't you ever use this lotion?" And they're like, "Look at your hands." And it was just like frostbitten,
Right.
gray,
Right.
ashy. And I'm like, oh, that's what the lotion is for.
Yes.
And then I started using it every day. It made such a difference.
Nice.
Like, wow, I didn't even realize, I got to lotion my hands in this cold weather.
And I don't think you think about it when you're there because you're in it, and it's just kind of your everyday thing. But I think whatever you grew up with, you want to experience the stuff that you didn't grow up with.
Sure.
For me, it was super important to move to Cayman, and I fell in love with the culture, and I fell in love with obviously the beautiful scenery, and just kind of the lifestyle. And I've very much made this my home. It would not surprise me at all if my kids grow up and they're like, I want to go live in the UK, and I want to go live in London, in a big city. I lived in a big city. Grew up in Milwaukee. I lived in Minneapolis. I lived in Chicago. So for me, coming to Cayman, and it's more of a small town feel, and everybody, it's like, this is different. This is cool. It would not surprise me in the least if my kids want to, go to university in London or in the UK somewhere or in the US somewhere. And experience, just the stuff that you can't experience here. So I get it, and I guess that's part of the adventure, right?
Yeah, I think so. So you must be pretty well known in Cayman. You were on TV for a while. Like, I feel like, do people ever come up to you and be like, "Hey, I remember you from..."
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Even if you don't know who they are.
Yeah. I get a lot of Newsman. I get a lot of that.
That's great.
Yeah. Not as much as I used to.
Right.
But because the station went out of business in 2019. And I was at the Compass for a couple of years after that, but I think people really recognize me from Cayman 27.
Yeah.
So that happens from time to time, and it's cool. And I thank people for watching the news. And I mean this, and it's not just something I say. Like, it's a very special thing, especially at Cayman 27, when people would tune in and to a degree, you're inviting these people into your home because you have them on the TV in your living room, and that's kind of that's a special thing that it's nice that people not only watched, but then obviously appreciated you enough to say what's up. That's a pretty cool thing.
Right.
So that happens from time to time, and I just thank people for watching, and after that, the question will become what we talked about before: is the TV station ever going to come back, or we miss it. It turns into a conversation more about the TV station. And that just tells me that there was, something, again, that was kind of, special at that station that connected with the community. Talk about me, but look at people like Donna Bush. I mean, she did that for 2 decades. And, people like Vanessa Hansen and John Foster. And, you have some people that, I was there for 10 years. There were people there that for 25 years,
Right.
And so those people, really made an impact on people's lives. And I think that's something very cool. And I mean, Donna's still doing it. Donna's at the CIG TV.
Right.
And so she's still doing it. That's pretty cool. It's a special thing when people kind of, recognize you and because you feel like you did some good work, or you must have made an impact on them in their lives in some way.
Right.
Yeah. So we're lucky in that way to be able to get that kind of feedback.
Yeah. I used to like your outfits.
Thank you.
I thought that you changed it up a bit, and it was pretty interesting.
It's one way or the other. It's either Mr. Newsman or it's, you're the guy with the bow ties. It's one of the two.
Right.
Yeah, and I still have all the bow ties. I just don't wear them anymore. I'm waiting for the next special occasion. When I first started going on TV, I was real nervous, right? And I didn't start out wearing bow ties, and man, I really cringe. I do. If I go back and look at some of my earlier stuff and even the later stuff, it's not like I'm a, super polished professional that you would see on NBC Nightly News or something like that. But I got my act together a little bit more by the end and definitely felt more comfortable. But the early days of when I first started as the sports producer and the sports anchor, I cringe. I really cringe looking at those because I was nervous and I was trying to smile and talk at the same time. And I can just tell I'm very up here with my shoulders, and it's I was just nervous and anxious. and eventually you do it long enough where you just kind of calm down a little bit. And you also realize, even though there's people watching, there are not that many people watching, right? So if you make a mistake or something, or, it's not going to haunt you forever.
Right.
No big deal. You just move on.
Right. Okay.
So I think after kind of like figuring that out a little bit, you take it less seriously. And also it's sports. It's meant to be fun. That was my bow tie thing. And then once it started, then I'm just like, well, I got to keep doing this now. Right. So, but it's funny. Now that I don't work in the news, so I wore a suit every day for 10 years, just about. And now that I don't do that anymore, I don't wear suits and I don't wear ties. Like it's nice to be able to grow out a beard and look a bit disheveled, because I couldn't really do that when I was on air.
Right.
So maybe I'm taking it to a bit of an extreme with my, I haven't shaved in a week and a half and haven't cut my hair in I don't even know how long. But it's nice to be able to just kind of do that. And I remember at the time, my good friend Ben Mead, who was the news director, he wouldn't let me grow a beard. He's like, no. You're an on-air personality. You got to shave every day, right? And I get it, and that is, you got to look, I guess, a certain way. But I was able to do something a little bit different with the bow tie.
I like that, and I know how you feel about being nervous, because I remember going on came on 27 a bunch for Daybreak. Usually it was Daybreak, and I would be nervous. I don't know why. Like, I think these are fine because this ain't live.
Absolutely.
If it all goes to hell, no one's going to see it. Right. But it's, it came on 27. You're going live. My mom's at home watching this right now. If I mess up, I mess up. I can't delete it. Right. So I remember myself being pretty nervous, going on an interview or whatever, and came on 27, much less having to go out and actually deliver the news to the people. Like that's tough.
Yeah. It's not an easy position. And, like I said, like a lot of respect for somebody like Donna Bush or Mona, or, I was the main news anchor myself for a while. But it's not an easy situation, especially because, a good news organization is having the anchor toss out to a reporter live in the field, or maybe taking a phone call live on air, or having a live discussion. And so the really tricky part is how to handle things when, like, maybe they don't go to plan, or if something happens, you have a reporter out live in the field and all of a sudden the signal cuts out or something like that. And you have to kind of think on your feet of what to do. That's kind of really where you're going to tell, somebody who's maybe newer at being an anchor versus somebody who's a bit more experienced. Because you just have to kind of work through those situations and try to make them as, the least awkward that they can be. But also, like, continue to just, like, the whole purpose of you doing this is to give the news to people. So, like, how do you get back on track and continue to do that without just being like, oh, sorry, I don't know what to do. Should we throw to commercial? It's like, no, we'll move on to this other story, which is also important. So I think you can tell a lot. It's not an easy position. And again, at a small news station, you're not only the anchor, you are probably the producer as well. You might be the news director. That was my situation when I was doing it. And so you're still wearing several different hats. It's not like you had all day to necessarily read through your scripts and prepare, because you were doing other stuff as well. So,
So I have a question. What were the election nights like? I came on 27.
Oh, crazy. You didn't sleep. You definitely didn't sleep.
How did you all sort of like go through the process? Are you like in touch with like the ticket offices or the ballot offices or whatever you call them?
Yeah.
Like, what were those? I remember watching Came on 27 in some of the elections and thinking, wow, they look like they're just like on it right now.
Yeah. So the way that the process works is, I'm trying to think back. So the most recent election that I was a part of was in the 2021 election, and I was at the Compass at the time. But we did a live stream all day. Like I think we started at 9 a.m. or maybe 8, and we were live for most of the day, and definitely at night we were live nonstop. And we had a little touch screen board in back of us. And anyway.
What was the touchscreen board? It's like an iPod or an iPad?
No. It was like a big screen TV. And it was actually, this was slick. This was like CNN type stuff. And this was one of those tools that originally was purchased by Cayman 27, and then when Hurley's Media was bought by Compass Media, moved over to the Compass, and that's how we were able to get our hands on it and use this thing. So, anyways, there's a big screen TV that we had in back of us that we would use a computer off screen to input data. So we would get data from the elections office, and they would be like, such and such candidate has this percentage of the vote or this many votes, and his opponent has this many votes. And so somebody on a computer on some software is plugging those numbers in and making sure that the names are right and that the district is correct.
Right.
And anyway, so we have all that information for all of the different constituencies. And this was being built months ahead of time. So so we had one screen in particular that was Grand Cayman and the sister islands cut into shapes, like vector shapes of their district. And so we needed to have, and this was meant to go like red if the progressives candidate won, and green if the opponent won, or whatever.
Right.
And so what we had to do is have a designer or whomever. A lot of times it would be me kind of entering the data. We had to come up with all these different kind of shapes. So we had to have a yellow West Bay West, a green West Bay West, and a red West Bay West, depending on what candidate was going to win, or if it went independent or whatever.
Right.
And then what you could do is not only could you change the color of West Bay West, but if you clicked on West Bay West, the candidates would appear in like a box, right? Or the three candidates would appear. So that took us, cutting out the images of each candidate and getting the images of each candidate and putting in the information and what political party they're a part of, or are they an independent or whatever. And so it was months, I say that to say, it was months of planning and work to get all these graphics ready and get all this information. And then the night of, what would happen is, we would just get the updates from the elections office. They send it out to all the media. As soon as we would get it, we would input it into the software, and then they would give me or Caroline, the thumbs up from over there, it's ready. And then it would be like, oh, I think we have our updated, results from, Georgetown Central. Let's click on it. And then we would see, what Kenneth, what he was at, with what percentage of the voters had voted, or sorry, the ballots were counted. And then where his opponent was and stuff like that. So it was a really slick kind of touch screen, like CNN caliber tool. In fact, it's made by a company called AccuWeather, which, they work definitely with all the major news organizations. In fact, they had to send down a consultant to even teach us how to use this thing, because it was but it was like a very powerful tool and like very, very cool. And so, we did a lot of that. So they sent us the results, and we would punch them into the thing. And then, so election days, again, took a lot of planning. Not only that kind of stuff, but then, we wanted to have, when I was at Cayman 27, we wanted to have as many reporters out in the field as we could at each particular district, and see if they can get interviews with candidates, after the what am I looking for? Polling places had closed. We would try to get interviews with people on the street. And so my early days, when I was a reporter, honestly, I would just drive around. My news producer or news director would have told me, hey, you do Georgetown South and this one, and you just, I remember just driving around for hours getting interviews. And if I could figure out where the people were, because, you have their cell phone numbers and, oh, they're all at this, so-and-so's home or this office space or whatever. You'd go over there and try and talk with them and try to convince them to come back on set. I remember that happened a couple times. People had, when Cayman 27 was at the West Star building, some of the, I think what was it called, P4P, or I don't remember what it was. One of the parties had gathered right across the street. And so we were able to go over there and be like, hey,
come on,
does anybody want to come? And I walked into the studio and I had, one of the candidates with me. And I remember Ben Mead was, he had been anchoring for like 8 hours straight. He was like, thank you for bringing somebody else to talk. Like, oh my God, get on set. And so, it was a lot of just organized chaos, honestly. And then, in those early days, I was just driving around and I wouldn't go to bed. You'd stay up until
it was over.
Until it was over. And It's gotten a lot quicker. I will say this 2021 election, I think I went home around like midnight or 1 a.m.
Wow.
Which was like, yeah, awesome.
With job done, basically.
With job done for the most part. Yeah. Yeah, the first election I covered for Cayman 27, I think was 2013. And would that be right?
I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it would. It would. Because then it would be 2017 and then 2021. So yeah. I didn't leave until, 7 in the morning, probably, or 8 in the morning. And I think part of that, was just because they've become, I think, a lot more efficient at counting the ballots and stuff like that. Yeah. And
So I wonder if Compass will do it this year.
maybe.
Yeah.
I hope so. I'm interested to see what the
next
coverage
year,
will look like, right?
Me too. Is it just going to be people on their cell phones? A
Maybe.
lot of it will be that for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Instagram. We're here at Georgetown West or whatever it is. And, those are always interesting when I would see you guys like working, because I remember whenever the election nights on Cayman 27. It was one of the the times you would get to see behind the scenes a little bit more at the station for some reason. It just looked like organized chaos is what it looked like.
Organized chaos, and you're on air for so much longer, right? The newscast used to only last an hour, but on election night, you're on
all the time.
All the time.
Right.
You're on nonstop. So, and you're talking to different reporters out in the field. You have reporters who maybe filmed something, quick came back to put a small video together, got it to the producer, they play it on air, and then you go back out, right? And you get more of that kind of stuff, right? So you're just on air more. So yeah, you probably do. And you see people, they haven't combed their hair in a while. And, they're tired because they've been there all day. And so they're on their like 20th cup of coffee or whatever and just, looking a bit woozy. So yeah, but they were cool nights. They were, again, probably cooler when you're young and have energy than when you're, an old man with 2 kids. But, it was just nonstop.
So tell me about that. Tell me about old man with 2 kids. What's Content Studio like? What are you up to?
Content Studio is my business that I started in 2021. It's a multimedia business, writing, photography, videography, live streaming. A couple of the kind of more major projects I'm doing and have been doing for the past couple of years is through Content Studio. I am the managing editor of the Cayman Bay Times. Monthly newspaper.
Right. Okay.
Yep. I work a lot with the Cayman Islands Football Association. In fact, I should take a moment to big up their team because I was with them in St. Kitts this last week, where they kind of made some Cayman Islands football history. They got promoted to the next league up in this specific competition, which they'd never done before. So that was really cool. And the players are awesome. They're really nice guys. And that was a very cool experience. So I work a lot with CIFA. I work with some of the other football associations on island, football clubs on island. I do a lot of work with the Department of Tourism, and various clients. So it's going really well. It started out as a side hustle and just through the years has kind of evolved into a growing business that I'm proud of. And we're here at the Cayman Islands Center for Business Development, and this organization I know has been super helpful for both of us in terms of running our businesses.
Sure.
And so, I'm at a stage now where I feel like my company is more than a side hustle and is a something worth putting 100% of myself into. And so that I'm kind of going through a bit of a professional transition period, I guess, if you want to put it like that, because I had a full-time employer and they're fantastic and my boss is fantastic. And, I think she understands that, this is sort of a, not even a passion project, but like a dream of mine, to do this kind of stuff, to go with the football team and do photography. She's a big photography fan herself, so she gets it. And she's a creative like me, so she gets it. And so, it's affording me a lot of really cool opportunities. It's a growing, thriving business. And I hope to be able to, continue putting even more of myself into it to hopefully keep it growing and offering some cool services to, we talked a lot today about storytelling. Everybody has a story to tell. Everybody wants to be able to get their story out there, especially if you're a business or an organization. You want to be able to tell people what's unique about you and your employees, your staff. So yeah, it's interesting because the fundamentals of what I do aren't drastically different than what I did when I was on the editorial side at media organizations, right? The Command and Bay Times is a pretty direct, it's a newspaper, so that one is actually direct. But
when you say direct, what does that mean?
Just in terms of like taking the skill set that I had from news and applying it to like content studio and what I'm doing now.
Right. Okay.
But even if I'm not, if I'm doing a video production for somebody and it's not news at all, it's like straight up, this is a commercial production. You can apply a lot of the same principles to it, especially when it comes to storytelling. It's really interesting though, what I found early on, and I'm still battling this to a degree. When you work so long in news doesn't have imagination. It's not supposed to, right? If you get to a scene, you shoot what's there. Right. You don't change things. You don't move this thing from here to there to make it look nicer. Right. It's like you get somewhere or you're at a game and you're shooting and this is what you're presented with and you capture it, right? And you don't manipulate anything because that would be like ethically wrong for a journalist and a media organization to do. Whereas when you're shooting like a commercial production or a film, it's a blank canvas and it's 100% up to you to decide, I'm going to add a light here and I'm going to do this and I'm going to
add this
and frame it this way. Exactly. Yeah. Like you are the artist and it is completely up to you. And it was a struggle for me and it still is to get out of like editorial mode. And, if I'm at a shoot and something's not right or she or he, can be put in a different position in the frame or if somebody misspeaks, it's okay to say, hey, you know what? Let's do that again. You know what? I know this is going to take a second to like set up, but it's going to look better than if we just do it like this.
Right.
And taking, going through that creative process has been a struggle for me because it's so drastically different. News, there's not really a whole lot of creativity in news, not really. I mean, you can write with flair and you can be a good photographer in news. You can be a fantastic editorial photographer. In fact, Tanius at the Compass is a fantastic photographer, but you don't move anything. And so yeah, going through that creative process and being able to kind of like challenge myself to make this better. What's the best that this could look or sound or how the story could be told? That has been a big transition that I didn't expect. So yeah, that I just kind of something I noted about this side of things when I got into it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the thing about production. There's just so much to it that, even if you're, we're both 10 years and more into this thing, there's just always another element to learn. Right. Whether it's the camera now and the lighting or the lens or, aspect ratios or, maybe it is the design, the production design and the wardrobe and, the makeup and the hair. And, there's always these different elements to it. That's why I love it so much because it's just constant learning. I hate not learning. Like I can't do a job where I'm just doing the same thing over and over.
I think we're learning all the time. And you learn by making mistakes. We started out this segment talking about how I was getting sick of seeing of running the wired lavalier up, up somebody's t-shirt or whatever.
And you're over that now.
And so, I've learned that that's not the most efficient way for me to do it or not the way that I want to be doing it. It was fine for the last 10 years. Now I want to maybe make it a bit more polished or just do it in a way that I think is maybe more efficient for me right now. So, and it's interesting you brought up aspect ratio because that's one of those things where in my experience, Instagram is changing, not necessarily for the better, but Instagram is changing photography and videography. I used to abide by, and I still do, the rule of thirds, right? And if I'm doing an interview with somebody, I would never want to stick them right in the middle of the frame. I want to put them on one of the thirds. And that's just like, photography 101 kind of stuff.
Right.
Now, if I'm making a reel for Instagram, we're not talking horizontal. This is now vertical, right? This is now portrait landscape.
Yeah.
And if you put them on the third, sometimes you can cut out some valuable stuff. So now I'm sticking people in the middle, and it's like, oh, this goes against what I've learned and what the basic rules. But you have to, because the outlets have changed.
Yeah.
The mediums, the platforms have changed.
Yeah, the distribution channels have changed,
yes,
right?
yes.
They want vertical. They want a certain aspect ratio, and it took me a while to accept that, I gotta say. But now I've kind of bought into it a bit.
Yeah.
I don't mind editing for a vertical aspect ratio. It's like, okay, this can be cool,
Right.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah.
I just shoot it and that's part of it too. When you're out there, you're shooting, especially stuff like your B-roll, in a different way, because, if before you had something in the frame and it was in the foreground here, and then on the other third, you had this thing in the background and you were really proud of how you framed it up. It's like, well, you're not going to see that on a reel. So choose one of those things, stick it where you are going to see it on the reel, unless you want to, it pains me to watch like sports highlights on Instagram, because not only is the camera moving,
it's true,
but the actual frame is moving too, right? And it just looks so awkward when they're trying to follow a ball. Yeah. And it's like, oh man, IG is just killing photography, right?
Yeah.
But also super helping photography, because it's another major channel that you can use. So,
that's true. A lot of the replays on vertical aspect ratio, you're just missing the replay. You're not seeing it, right? But you're kind of sort of all putting it together still. Like, even like I'm on YouTube and the YouTube shorts come up, and a lot of them are vertical.
Yes.
It's like, maybe I'm watching a Seinfeld rerun and like George isn't even in the screen anymore. Like,
he's there somewhere.
You know the scene that he's supposed to be there, but he's not there. Right?
Exactly. Because they had to pick one. They had to pick somebody to put on there.
Sometimes they don't even pick. We're just going to convert this to vertical.
Wherever it ends up. So you're just looking at nothing. Yeah. Right. An empty room. There's two people on either side, but you're not seeing any of them.
Right up the middle.
Right. Oh, that's hilarious.
Oh, man. So I've kind of bought into it, and I've actually it's been a good experience for me, because I had this documentary that I did, and it was a behind the scenes documentary of a film that we did, Luna's Ring, and we filmed us behind the scenes in like Cuba and just trying to make this thing happen.
Awesome.
But I never really wanted to release it because it was just behind the scenesy, just low quality, not cinematic. I never know what, I was like, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do with this thing. And I just started releasing it on stories.
Okay.
And it just fits it so much better. I'm like, this is actually the perfect way to release this. Right. It doesn't have to be cinematic. And now I'm on vertical. I'm vertically in the heck out of it. So I just, I move what I want in. Right. And it just kind of works on a story's perspective. Yes. I'm like, wow, okay. So the vertical Instagram storytelling aspect ratio is actually helping me out here with this, because I wouldn't have released the documentary any other way.
And I think that's maybe what I had to kind of start changing my approach to, was like, again, Instagram Reels are not going away because Kevin Morales doesn't like them, so how can I start to change the way I shoot and change the way I approach a project, because I know that's how it's going to go. And now that's become one of my, if I'm having kind of, that first discussion with a potential client about
what they want to do with the video,
where are you going to put it?
Yeah.
Right. And what is the aspect, is this going to be portrait or landscape? And that has become a part of my discussion straight away, because that's going to help me understand everything else about the project and how I'm going to shoot it and what to include. And the other thing I do like, I have to admit, is, you'll see something where if you do have, a traditional kind of horizontal shot, you can now layer like 3 of those. You can get like 3 of those to fit on a reel. Or if you have a wide shots, in my experience, don't work well, obviously, with that aspect ratio. Sure. But 3 of them do if you want to bring them on the screen at the same time. Right. So it's made me edit in a different style as well. So it's like you just kind of figure out ways to, and a lot of it, going back to the benefits of Instagram, is seeing what other photographers are doing and what other videographers are doing, and just be like, oh man, that looks cool. I like the way that they did that. So now I'm going to try and incorporate that into my next project, right? And I think that is a lot of it. So again, it's all about adapting to what's happening, swimming, rolling with the punches, swimming with the current. You're not going to fight some of these tools. And so even if they're a bit awkward to use at first, stories, I never use stories. Mm-hmm. And now I have on my content studio IG, I don't have a lot in there, but I also have, where it, like toward the top where you can hit on like, you can keep your different like categories and stuff. I have a BTS and I've got a couple things on there where you can see me taking some photographs and then shows you the final photo, what it looks like.
Right.
And it took a while, and I realized, oh yeah, this is a cool way to tell the story, because I don't want to post this stuff and keep it there forever necessarily. Sometimes. But yeah, it's just like, how do I use a post versus a reel versus a story versus whatever.
Versus those things that hang out at the top. What are those called anyway?
I don't know, the little circle guys. I don't know.
I use them too now, right? Because when you look at some of the pages and it's like, wow, it really looks good when you have those up. So I sort of like went through it. Right, took the time to think it out. Okay, what are we going to put there? And you got to put the right photo first so it appears as the image.
Right.
And, it's like... embracing it, and it's hard for us because this is all new and it changed up everything, and then we see all these like young people with no experience, they're just running with it and it looks great, and it's like we can sit here and complain or we can get on the bandwagon. You got to adapt, you got to change, and when you actually start to use it, then it's like, actually this is good, this works.
Absolutely. And you know what, one of the things that we both learned about here at CICBD was about kind of scaling your business, and maybe instead of me killing myself for an hour trying to post something, maybe I partner up with a 20-year-old who can do this in like 5 minutes and just wants to get involved, doesn't have they're not a business owner, but they like cameras and they know social media, and they, you know what I mean? So maybe it's identifying somebody else who you can partner with to do this stuff for you. And that's an important part of growing your business as well. So I haven't necessarily done that. I'm not saying that I'm not a success story necessarily on that front, but I know that that's kind of the end goal. And that's an important part of of growing your business and being a business owner. So. Yeah.
Because these apps are going to change. More apps are going to come along. TikTok is TikTok. And I know TikTok's not going to be the end. There's going to be the thing that comes after TikTok. Yep. And, yeah. And
how do I use this as a tool that can benefit me? And it's interesting because absolutely Instagram can be a commercial benefit. I went to a photography workshop earlier this year that was not a cheap workshop to attend. It was in Tampa, and I flew to Tampa, and these were two sports photographers that I saw on Instagram, and I loved their work and I loved their style. It was something very different and unique that I hadn't seen before, but I was super into it. And so I bought a ticket to their workshop and I went and did it. And that's how these guys, that's a lot of their income now, is, traveling around the country and doing these workshops, showing people exactly step for step what they're doing.
Right.
And without Instagram, I never would have learned about these guys, and I never would have bought a ticket to their workshop. Right, so, there is, commercial value there, 100% if you know how to kind of harness it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Huh. And so you also went to the Olympics.
I did.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was awesome. Yeah. That was so cool.
And this was content studio work?
This was content studio, but for all intents and purposes, I'm content studio's only full-time employee. So it was me. Like, I didn't have any other, partners that I work with go. So it was just me, but it was through Content Studio. Yes.
This was another client of yours?
Yes. Sorry. So, it was for the Cayman Islands Olympic Committee, and they, in the past have sent along a media liaison, and I knew that. And the way it all unfolded was like this. I was sitting in my house working, and I was like, I think it was right when we got back, me and my family, from New York, and it was such a cool vacation. And I was like, man, what's next? You get home from vacation and sometimes you're feeling a little bit blue because you had a good time, right, and whatever. And I'm like, what's next? And I'm like, man, wouldn't it be awesome to go and both from a personal perspective and professional perspective, to go to the Olympics and go to Paris? I'd never been to France. And I just thought it was such a cool idea. But I'm like, it sounds real expensive, and I don't really know how I'm going to do this. But then I applied for a grant with the Cayman National Cultural Foundation.
Cool.
And I was awarded the grant. And the grant was for a project to do a documentary following kind of the preparations of Cayman's Olympians.
Nice.
To put together a short documentary film on it. And so that was the start of it. And so I was awarded that grant. And as part of the grant, they wanted to know, well, what other partners are you going to work with? We know that this probably isn't going to be, the end all be all of the funding that you'll need. So who are you going to work with?
Right.
And they actually make you spell that out in the proposal.
Yeah.
And so I said, what I proposed was I would, in addition to receiving this grant, I would partner with the Cayman Islands Olympic Committee and go to the games as their media liaison for several reasons, including like access to the athletes and to the Olympic Village and all this kind of stuff. Because if I go as part of the team, then I can have access to that stuff, right? And that's exactly how it unfolded. And so I approached the Olympic Committee, and after time, they said, cool, well, let's move forward with this. And so I was their official press liaison, went up there. It is such a, man, so I've shot NFL games before.
Have you shot NFL games?
I have.
All right, before you continue with the Olympic story here, tell me about NFL games. What have you shot and how?
So it was actually, it was Cleveland Browns, Green Bay Packers. So only one actual proper NFL game.
And this was out in Green Bay?
This was at Lambeau Field.
Yeah.
And I was working at the Portage Daily Register newspaper at the time, which was part of a larger newspaper chain throughout the Midwest called Lee Enterprises, I think. I don't even remember. Anyway, and we needed some photos. I wanted to go do it. Like
Right.
I just thought it was cool.
And you're like on the field?
Oh yeah.
Awesome,
Yeah. So
awesome.
and I was a proper media person, like NFL, the credentialing process is rigid. You can't just you have to be with a news organization. You have to say who your news organization is. They're going to research it. They're going to see if they consider you to be legit or not.
Right.
I feel like I had to send them a copy of my identification. And anyways, they do some checks on you.
Yeah, for sure.
Any old person can't just roll up to an NFL game
Right.
and take some photos. But because I was working for the newspaper and the newspaper chain, we were obviously legit, and I was a real journalist and a real photographer. And the chain wanted some photos too, so that they had like file photos to use. So there was a reason for me to go. And yeah, it was very cool. What I experienced was like, I was having a tough time keeping up with the players, back and forth, right? Because they're so fast back and forth that, it was a struggle. I shot plenty of like Division I college football games, University of Wisconsin, University of Minnesota, Northwestern University. I shot a lot.
But the NFL was a bit different.
It was the athletes are just, and it's no surprise, different level.
Yeah.
And what I experienced, it wasn't necessarily the straightforward that was different. It was these guys were faster and quicker side to side, and I was like, I can't keep up.
Yeah.
And NFL, there's 22 guys on the field, and they get lost back there, and then all of a sudden he pops out, and it's like, how do you get over there? But it was a really cool experience. I got one of my favorite photos ever. Is I got a Aaron Rodgers post touchdown. And he was kind of looking in my direction, not at me, but he was kind of looking in my direction, and he's just holding up a finger.
Cool.
It was cool. It's one of my favorite photos I've ever taken.
Yeah.
He obviously doesn't play for Green Bay anymore.
Right.
So it's not, it wasn't as valuable as it once was in my heart, but even still. So that was really cool. But I mean, with the Olympics, if I thought, credentialing was a bit of a tough process for the NFL, I mean, multiply it times 1,000 with the Olympics. They needed, every document that you have to attend meetings beforehand. You have to go through, it's not like you just show up, flash your credential, and you can, get in everywhere. You have to have other like tickets and stamps and whatever, things you got to pick up once you're there from the media headquarters, which is on the other side of Paris, which, anyway. So it was like an overwhelming experience, but so cool. From a personal perspective, my family was able to go with me. So the first week, because Cayman's Olympians didn't really get going until the second week. So the first week was a little bit slower in terms of like where I had to be. Right. And so we had a little bit more time. We went, we did all the stuff. We, Eiffel Tower and Arc de Triomphe and all the stuff.
You like Paris?
I absolutely loved it. I was blown away. I got caught up in the charm of it.
Sure.
And I'd love to go back. It was such a wonderful city. People were nice to us. Thank God enough people spoke English because our French is absolutely terrible. So yeah, we had such a pleasant experience. Would love to go back. And then for my kids, I was really happy that they were able to experience that too, because I just feel like that's life-changing for them.
Right.
It was life-changing for me. And then professionally, it was very cool too, because, I'm sitting in the La Defense Arena, the swimming area with like 20,000 other people screaming. And I remember like multiple times getting goosebumps, just being like, this shit is crazy, right? And it was helped by the fact that, we had two fantastic swimmers, Jillian and Jordan. And Jordan Crooks ended up going on to the finals and did all sorts of stuff that no other Caymanian Olympian had ever done before. So it was cool because I was able to be a part of that journey with him, in a very small way. God, that kid is so humble. I went and interviewed him. So from his perspective, he makes it to the finals. A whole country, a whole region is watching him, and he finished 8th, right? Which is last in the finals, in the world at the Olympics, right? But I'm expecting that he's going to come out, and so I'm like basically underneath the bleachers is where they have the media area. There's thousands or hundreds of media personnel down there, and the long hallway where everybody's getting interviewed. And anyways, when Jordan gets done, I have to assume feeling a little bit disappointed. He does like 2 live TV interviews straight away and goes through this gauntlet of like TV interviews that you have to go through. And then he walks out to me. And he's just like, I'm like, how are you feeling? He's like, I'm okay. And I'm like, asking him, so are you feeling more disappointed, or are you just kind of happy to be here, or, whatever. And he's like, listen, I don't set goals like I want to win gold. I want to finish on the podium. He's like, my only goal ever in any race that I do is, did I race the best that I could in this race?
Right.
And he was being 100% serious. He wasn't just saying that because that's the right thing to say or whatever.
Right.
I was just blown away by like his maturity. I was really impressed by him. He's such a gracious kid as well. And he's a phenomenal athlete and phenomenal swimmer. And like, I was, I was there professionally and I was there to do a job, but I couldn't help get kind of swept up in the emotion of it as well. And I was like really proud of him, and it was really cool to be able to, send out press releases about him and interviews and kind of help get his story out to the media.
Right.
I was glad to be a part of all that. So from a professional point of view, it was really cool. A couple of days after swimming stopped, I was able to go check out Devante. He ran the 100 meters. And so I was able to go to Stade de Paris, which is, historic venue. That's where like the French national team plays. And that was a cool experience just to be in that stadium. And again, be able to go down to like the media areas and kind of in the belly of the beast and see, these hundreds of other people doing the same thing that I am. And cameras from all over the world and presenters from all over the world and live shots happening right next to you. And it was just like, super cool. Loved it. Professionally, personally, me and my family all just had such a good experience. So I'm very grateful. And I even wrote the CIOC a letter after I got back, and I was like, thank you for doing this. I know this is work, and but you guys didn't have to choose me to do this, and I appreciate that you did. So it was very cool. So now the problem though is I've got because I started working on this even the documentary even months before the Olympics. Interviews and footage, and when the athletes would come back, when Charlotte would come back, I would show up to like different events that she would be holding. So now I've got a shit ton of footage and a couple of weeks to get this thing put together so I can get it over to the CNCF because they're the ones who gave me the grant to do it.
Right.
So now that's my challenge, and I couldn't because it ended up it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. So when the Olympics were done, we were back in Cayman. I had to take a breath, and I couldn't do any editing. I couldn't because I needed some space. So now I gotta now enough time has passed now where I'm kind of ready to get back on it and actually did all the work. Now let's get the editing together. Let's get this final thing together. So very cool. I hope that I can go along with them to LA in 4 years.
I think you're the prime candidate for that, buddy.
Well, I hope so. We had a good working relationship. Shakina and Robert over there, who are the full-time staff members, man, they're the hardest working people I've ever met. And they do it because they like truly love Cayman Island sports.
Right.
I was in the Olympic Village interviewing Devante, and he was given some good answers about like representing his country and stuff. And she probably wouldn't appreciate me saying this, but I could see that Shakina was getting like emotional because she loves it. Like she works for the CIOC because she loves sports and she loves Cayman and she wants to like properly promote and assist the Cayman Islands athletes. And it's like, that's just such, in my mind, an honorable thing. And especially, you're giving back to your country in a position like that. So yeah, I hope so. I'd love to continue working with them. It was it's really nice when you can do work that is rewarding. And that's exactly what this was. So right. I hope so. And I know there's even other competitions in between now and then, youth competitions, stuff like that, that I would love to go do because I think it's important to promote Cayman's athletes. That's why I was so happy to go to St. Kitts with the football team this last week.
Right.
And, capture video of them and interviews and photos because, they did something historic. And I think the more we can get it out there and the more that, younger Caymanians can see that and younger kids can look up to these older guys, that's only going to benefit the country. That's only going to benefit younger athletes and kind of the whole Cayman sports landscape. So again, like I'm really, kind of honored to play a small role in all this stuff, but it's rewarding for me. So I hope they do. I hope they do bring me on again. Like I'd love to.
I'm sure they will, man. That's super exciting to hear about, that the energy and the vibe over there at the Olympics, especially when you're there with Cayman and, it's your country and, your athletes. And it's always special being with Caymanians in another city as well,
yes.
And know that you have that special connection to that island back home and that no one really knows about, but you guys know about it.
Exactly.
And it's a good feeling.
Funny you say that. I don't know if I think it's a thing that people say, like, no matter where you go in the world, like you'll find a Caymanian or you'll find people with some sort of connection to Cayman, right?
Right.
So a couple things happened in Paris that were actually pretty nuts considering the population, whatever. So there was one day we took the kids to Disneyland, Euro Disney or Disney Paris, whatever they call it.
I forgot about there was a Euro Disney.
There is.
That's in Paris?
Yep, it's in Paris.
Okay.
Yep. So we took the kids there and we bumped into somebody from Cayman, my wife's work friend. My wife's work friend and her family in Paris were at, Euro Disney
on the same day, same time.
Same time. We were like, holy shit, and like, it was bonkers. It was nuts. And I want to say that even happened one other time. And if it wasn't that, there were definitely people on the subway who were just stopping me because everywhere I go, I'm wearing my Cayman Islands, gear.
Right.
People stopping me saying, "Oh, I've been to Cayman before," and sharing stories of like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go down there this spring or whatever." And so people recognize Cayman, and that was cool. Again, just to kind of represent the country, and people they never stop you, in my experience, to say something bad about Cayman.
That's
it's always
true.
like, most beautiful place I've ever been to,
Right.
and I took my daughters down there, and it was great, and
It's true.
stuff like that.
It's always a good topic of conversation. People are always interested to hear that you're from the Cayman Islands.
Yes.
Like, even if they've never been there, then they're still like, what?
Right.
Really?
Right.
It's like, that's a good feeling.
Yeah, it definitely was.
Yeah, I've definitely run into Caymanians all around the world, in Scotland, randomly, in big cities. I remember downtown Chicago, downtown.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like walking, I see this guy. I'm like, boy, he looks like that Caymanian guy back home. And then I'm like, just kind of disregard it. And then, he gets closer. I'm like, are you from Cayman? He's like, I expect him to be like, no, what the hell are you talking about? He's
Right.
like, yeah. And I'm like, shit. And we grabbed each other. It's
Oh
like,
my
what
God.
the hell?
Yeah,
Even San
yeah.
Francisco one time.
No kidding.
The wharf area where all the
Yes.
wharfs
Oh,
are.
the
Ran
seals.
into some
No kidding.
Caymanian there. Just like, it just crossed my face. There's like thousands of people out
Right,
there.
right.
We're like, what the heck?
Yeah,
It's great when that happens.
It's amazing. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a reminder of how special this place is for sure.
Yeah, man.
100%.
Cool, man. Well, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on it.
I know it took me a while to finally find a date because usually my Saturday mornings are running around kids to sports competitions and whatever. But yeah, I'm glad we were able to do this. Thanks so much.
Yeah, me too. And good to like hear a little bit more, what you're up to with Content Studio.
Yeah. Yeah.
Reminisce a bit on the Cayman 27 days. We'll see what happens in the future with the station. Like, see if your prediction comes true.
We'll see.
Maybe it'll be your station.
Maybe,
You're like the prime candidate for that, right?
Right.
So,
yeah. As long as they don't keep me up till election night on 6 a.m. or to 6 a.m. or something.
Someone's going to come hire you for next year election.
Right.
Watch.
Yeah.
We need you to live stream this.
Right.
You better get those young kids on board real quick.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
We're gonna do this vertical. We're gonna do this election vertical aspect.
Well, my kids don't know this, but my oldest is 9 now, so he's almost getting to the point where it's like, hey, bro,
you gotta start producing.
Maybe you could hold a camera. He has actually asked me, both of them, to show them how to edit, but not probably for the reason we think, because like all good, like most children, I'm assuming, they love YouTube. And so they have their own YouTube channels, and daddy does not have the time or the bandwidth to produce their stuff for them.
Right.
So they've actually asked me to show them, this is how we do it. You cut it here, you bring this here. And so, so yes, a couple more years and they will be my staff, whether they like it or not.
That's funny. You got to produce your own content nowadays. Like,
Got to.
People are always like, yeah, can you come film this? And you want to do this? It's like, no.
Right.
You figure that out.
Yeah,
you got a budget? No budget? Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yes.
Good luck with that.
Right. Yes. The CICBD taught me that this might not be the right opportunity. Right.
My business advisor says this is not a good idea.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Cool, man. Well, have a good rest of the day. I'm sure you got things to do on this Saturday. And let's get together again soon one day on the podcast.
Man. Cool. Appreciate it.
You too, man.
Thanks, Badir.